Good morning. This is Omar Mohammed, and this is our 36 minutes on anti-Semitism. Today's guest is from Poland. Our guest is Anna Zawadzka. Welcome, Anna.
Welcome, Omar. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Can you introduce yourself?
I live in Poland. I'm a sociologist. I work in Polish Academy of Sciences, Institute of Slavic Studies, and also I'm a member of Center for the Research on Contemporary Antisemitism based in London. Basically that's it.
We are honored to have you, Anna. So, given that, and I say this almost every time I interview a speaker, because I believe that definitions are of great importance to tackling any problem, but also to find solutions. So my question is, what is the definition of anti-Semitism?
Contrary to you, I'm not a big fan of definitions, I must say. And especially the definition of anti-Semitism is problematic because my experience with definitions of anti-Semitism is that sometimes it let us misunderstand or mislead some social dynamics in a way that anti-Semitism, in my opinion, is something that changes and it really develops all the time. So usually the definitions we use are already too old, and we need to change them all the time. But for the purpose of our talk and also maybe to explain a bit of my perspective, I would say that for me, anti-Semitism is something that I call a category of perception or a set of categories of perception. So this anti-Semitism is a bit as like lenses through we perceive the world or we perceive social dynamics. This is the one part of the definition I would create just now. The other part is that as categories of perception, anti-Semitism is also a set of cultural patterns, and those patterns are deeply rooted in a mindset or in collective mindsets of communities or of society in general. And it's also rooted in classical texts of particular cultures. Saying that, I would like to emphasize that for me, anti-Semitism is not exclusively part of some radical extreme thinking. It's very often based in the direct center of the cultures because of the history of those cultures. And especially if you observe and study the history of Poland and the cultural history of Poland, then you can see how classical texts of these cultures, for example, books that children have to read in schools, they still are based on some anti-Semitic prejudices or anti-Semitic way of thinking or anti-Semitic categories of perception. And the last thing I think I would like to add to this definition is something that I take from a brilliant scholar, Marcel Stützler. And Marcel Stützler is an editor of a fascinating book about the roots of sociology, because in his opinion, I think he proved that in a great way, the beginnings of sociology was very deeply connected with the rise of anti-Semitism in a way that sociology was trying to somehow explain what is going on with this phenomenon. he in his article, in his contribution to this book, he calls anti-Semitism a travesty of sociology, in a way that anti-Semitism is a mechanism or a way of thinking that helps people, individuals, but also communities, to explain their own difficulties or the cruelty or the injustice they experience. And because the real reasons of those injustices or experiences are so difficult to catch, because they are abstract, and the reasons of those injustices are structural. So there are no, there is no a guilty person that you can say, oh, you can blame for it. So then you need kind of a substitution, a replacement object to blame for bad experiences or injustices you or your comrades experience. And this is what anti-Semitism offers. So yeah, I think for now that would be the three parts are important for thinking about anti-Semitism.
It's very important to go through the definition, but let me ask the question also, once again, related to definition. Do you think that sometimes it might be better not to have a specific definition, but rather work more explicitly on the phenomena, because it itself, anti-Semitism evolves. It's not static, it's dynamic, it evolves over time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not against definitions, and I also know that we need definitions to construct our tools, to for example, estimate anti-Semitism. So if we want to estimate anti-Semitism, we have to define, at least for now, for particular moment in history, what is it, and then we can construct how we want to check how popular it is or how it occurs. But at the same time, I think we need to be very aware that this is phenomenon that is changing all the time, that is still, following the current times, and you can observe it easily nowadays. I mean, after 7 October, we have a new situation, and of course, in a recent anti-Semitism, there are a lot of paths and strands and stakes that they were already before in anti-Semitic thinking, but now we have some new forms of it and new manifestations of anti-Semitism, and I think it's also very important to be careful about that. I can give you the example from Poland. The classical research on anti-Semitism is still quantitative in Poland, and this research is based on some on those let's say traditional tools. So you ask people questions such as, "Do you think Jews rule the world?" or "Do you think that Jews have too much power in media?" Or "Do you think that Jews are always in solidarity to each other, and they are not empathetic to other people than Jews?" and so on and so on. And of course, you can estimate some kind of anti-Semitism based on that questions, but I think nowadays the strongest anti-Semitism, or the most important part of the anti-Semitic mindset, is placed somewhere else, and is placed in the historical politics of Poland. So instead of those questions, perhaps we should ask questions as, who, in your opinion, was killed in Auschwitz? Or because Poles believed that they were mostly Poles killed in Auschwitz, maybe we could ask, do you think that it was a majority of Poles who helped Jews to survive during the Holocaust, which is again a kind of a popular fantasy in Poland because of the historical politics. And these are lies. They don't sound so anti-Semitic, but they are based in the historical politics, which is very much rooted in competition with the Jewish history and in the competition of suffering with Holocaust. So we have some new forms of anti-Semitism, but we need a very fragile tools and observations to follow what is going on in a social sphere.
So what is the current state of anti-Semitism in Poland?
Yeah, that's a big question. I think in Poland, the different stages of anti-Semitism, I would say, overlap. There are some patterns of pre-modern anti-Semitism, very much connected with Christianity, such as blood libel or this general fantasy of Jews who killed the God, and that's why they are punished through the ages. So that's the one path of anti-Semitism which is still vibrant somehow in Poland. But then there are another paths or another strands of anti-Semitism, and they always overlap with each other. And the other one is very much connected with this Jewish Bolshevism stereotype or Jewish Bolshevism prejudice. I never know how to call this extraordinary complex phenomenon. But let's call it stereotype for the purpose of the conversation. So Poland, as other post-communist countries in the region in Central and Eastern Europe, is totally based symbolically and culturally on anti-communism. The defeat of communism in 1989 is, let's say, original story of the new state, of a new morality, of a new order, and because of that, there is still a deep need of the society, but also of the authorities, to symbolically clean the community from the sin of communism. And what is the easiest way to clean yourself from the sin? Well, you need to push it on someone else. You need to project the sin on someone else. And Jewish Bolshevism is very useful because then you can say, yes, we had communism and it was established in Poland as other countries in the region, but it was not a Polish idea. Communism is something deeply it's a stranger. Communists were also strangers to Poles, and it was established by strangers, meaning Jews. And then after communism or during communism, the anti-communist opposition, and then after communism, we could finally find our own way to the Polish state and to the Polish entity. So this myth or stereotype of Jewish Bolshevism is a kind of a tool thanks to which you can establish a Polish community as an anti-communist community from the beginning of the world. And then maybe I should also mention, especially because of 7th of October, the anti-Zionism, which has very special history in Poland, and now this history somehow comes to the door again, because Poland experienced, or Jewish Poles, Polish Jews experienced harsh anti-Semitic state-organized campaign in 1967-68, and they were expelled from Poland. 15,000 Jews had to leave country because of that, and every Jewish person experienced anti-Semitic harassment those days. So it's a common memory of the Jewish minority in Poland, and also of the Jewish migration from Poland. And this whole campaign went under the slogan of anti-Zionism. So nowadays, when we have again those slogans, those anti-Zionist slogans, especially in the academic milieu, this history is recalled, let's say.
So you mentioned October 7th. How has the situation changed post October 7th? Did it have a direct impact? We have seen manifestations and protests across Poland with also some anti-Semitic. I believe there was a very significant anti-Semitic slogan and some manifestations during the protest.
Yeah, that's true. On one of the first protests against Israel intervention in Gaza, there was a woman having a poster with a Star of David throwing to the trash. I don't remember exactly the slogan, but you can imagine what was that. But I would say that the slogans, the banners, posters, flyers, they were not very much different than in the West, let's say, in other countries. And I think this is one of the phenomenon which needs to be mentioned here, that anti-Zionism as a part of the leftist common sense, let's say, it wasn't so intense in Poland before. But now it has become more intense because it is so intense abroad. It is so intense on the West. And here there is this very interesting paradox of Poland, but also I think other post-communist countries, that there is still this very strong complex in Poland of the West, the complex that we are the East, or we are perceived as the East state, East country, East region, which is nothing interesting, which is a bit barbaric, which is not so developed as West, and so on. So this complex makes people watch what's going on the West and repeat it, sometimes completely, without any thinking about the local context. But local context is actually super intense in this, if it comes to the Zionism and anti-Zionism. First, because of this history from 67, 68, I already mentioned, but also because of the origins of the State of Israel. I think if it comes to the anti-Zionism, let's say, those two stories, 67, 68, anti-Semitic campaign in Poland, and the origins of Israel, and the fact that a lot of people who emigrated to Palestine before the Second World War were Polish Jews who couldn't stay anymore in Poland because of such strong anti-Semitism. They are now called, colonizers. And they are compared to colonizers as, I don't know, Portuguese or British or Hispanic or Dutch colonizers who were, super cruel and conquistadors. So actually, those colonizers of Palestine were very often members of the kibbutz movements from Poland and from this region, from the Eastern European region, who were trying to prepare themselves for living somewhere else than in Poland, because they already realized that living in Poland is more and more unbearable and more and more impossible because of anti-Semitism. So that's the local context of anti-Zionism.
So if we talk about, you mentioned a very important point, which I would really also like to hear more about it, like the influence of Western Europe, but also the influence of the United States. There is a very intense anti-Semitism in the United States among the left, among the right wing. Is anti-Semitism in Poland, does it function within the trends of Eastern Europe, or it's more influenced by Western Europe and the United States?
I think it's exactly on the crossing of those two factors, let's say. And the very special or the very unique mixture of both influences from the West with the whole authority, symbolic authority of the West in countries such as Poland, and the local context of the local history of anti-Semitism, the particular history of anti-Semitism of Central Europe, the particular history of anti-Semitism, and part of this history is the history of Holocaust, which happened here. All of this together creates a very special mixture and very special situation with anti-Semitism in Poland, which I'm trying sometimes to, describe or to just embrace with my mind, but it's really difficult because I always try to, take some cut it into pieces to see what's inside. But the fact is that cutting this into pieces is a mistake, because it always works together, on this crossings. So, for example, today I must totally emphasize that most of the time anti-Semitism is open anti-Semitism, let's say, was on the side of the radical right-wing parties or radical right-wing organizations in Poland. Definitely, in Poland there are still some radical right-wing communities, groups, also formal groups that they take their history, they take their origins from before the war, so they have this clear fascist ancestors, let's say, and they are proud of it. And they are quite openly anti-Semitic, but the anti-Semitism on the left, anti-Semitism connected with anti-Zionism or anti-Semitism hidden under the anti-Zionist slogans. This is something which was already here from some time, but now after 7 October, it's getting much stronger, and it takes a lot of empowerment from the West, and then it also copy the patterns, the aesthetics, the arguments from American and Western scholars or activists.
The Christianity is also very strong in Poland. Conservatism, there is also left wing. So if we talk about the demography of anti-Semitism, and who is who in the anti-Semitic manifestations, how do you explain the situation in Poland?
Mm-hmm. Catholic Church. It's of course it's still it's actually an interesting case. Since 10 years, maybe, experts have been saying that Catholic Church is weak. It's getting weaker and weaker. They have less and less people. They have less and less members. Not so many people, participate in masses every Sunday, and so on. And I'm always suspicious about that, because yes, perhaps it's true if again you count persons, but if you observe, if you wanna see how they operate as a political agent, or how strong they are, if it comes to some symbolic sphere, how often, for example, the authority of the church are asked about crucial questions for the state, their opinion are always taken into consideration. Then it's difficult to say that they are so weak now. Maybe they are much more weaker than they were 20 years ago or 30 years ago, but still they are no question that it's still a very strong political agent here. Catholic Church has always had this anti-Semitic agenda. In Poland, very strong even after the 1963, when there was this big change in a Catholic philosophy, thanks to the Pope 23 and 23rd. But actually, Polish Church never fully accepted this turn. They stayed conservative. They didn't want to change their. They didn't want to open to some new trends in the Catholic Church, and they did so to the extent that some people inside of the Catholic Church, from inside the Catholic Church, they claim that actually there is a general universal Catholic Church and there is also Polish Catholic Church, and these are like two different items. I think for me it's always a bit problematic to discuss Catholic Church, because I must say, maybe it's a bit cynical, but I don't expect Catholic Church to change. I don't want to even work on it. I think the only solution is to really, separate state from the church, which never happened in Poland, unfortunately. I mean, it happened a bit, but not also to the full extent during the communist period. But then this unity of church and state was reestablished in 1989 during the transformation. So I think this, what I expect, or what I think it should be worked on, we should work on the state, to be secular and to be independent and to also fight with anti-Semitism also within the church. But if it comes to the church itself, maybe because I'm not Catholic, but it's not my goal to go, to go inside and discuss with these people. It's like, yeah, okay, they have their agenda, they have their ideology. But they should be as everyone else, they should obey the laws and they should obey the rules. And the rules should be that anti-Semitism is something we should fight with and not support.
So what does the government do?
Basically nothing. I must say, yeah, maybe I should mention the latest news. As probably you know, there was this tragic event in the Gaza Strip. 7 people were killed by the Israeli army, and they were workers of the Aid Foundation. It was a mistake, and the IDF and a Polish Israeli ambassador in Poland apologizes to Polish society, Polish government, because one of those persons who were killed were a Polish volunteer. But the reaction on it, including the reaction of the current Polish government, which is liberal, it's not this conservative right-wing government which was here before, was really, in my opinion, was totally over the top. I mean, the prime minister demanded apologies immediately. He said something about losing the patience with Israel because Poland is such a great alliance with Israel, and then Israel does such a horrible things to Poland, which sounded almost like, they did it for purpose, and they killed a Pole with purpose, which is really this old anti-Semitic cliche, that they come for Poles and they want to, harm them. And of course, it was absolutely tragic and a horrible story. But I must say, I have no idea what else the Israeli government could do. I mean, they did apologize, and they did it. They said it was a mistake, but the reaction was definitely too much. And I think it was too much. It wouldn't be the reaction like this if it was, for example, a government of United States. It was the reaction like that because there is this very specific way of perceiving Israel in Poland, and it's it's at least double standards. You don't perceive other countries in a way as you perceive Israel. You don't, watch them so carefully as Israel. But in general, I think Polish government is very much convinced that anti-Semitism is not a problem anymore in Poland. That if it exists on the margins of the society. If it exists only in radical right extreme military groups, which are, super seldom small groups. And they are sure that in the majority of Poles and in the center of the Polish culture, there is a respect and understanding and knowledge about Jewish history and Jewish people in general. And the thing is that sometimes this. It's a very superficial, very shallow way of understanding anti-Semitism and perceiving anti-Semitism. I would say that it's also a way to avoid any confrontation with the real situation here. And they think that everything is fine, that we Poles don't hate Jews anymore. They are not full of prejudices against Jews anymore. But at the same time, they create they still. Practice those stereotypes or those prejudices by, as I mentioned before, by this historical politics we experience all the time in Poland. So the competition with the Jewish history or treating or perceiving Holocaust, especially as a history that somehow threatens, the history of Poland or the commemorations of the Polish martyrs or whatever, is really a modus vivendi of this whole milieu here. And also you can see it everywhere in the streets because there are so many monuments of the Polish martyrdom based in the way you commemorate Holocaust. So sometimes if you are not aware of what's going on, you can even, take one for another. So this is what Polish government do, actually, which I would definitely call anti-Semitic.
So beside the government, the non-governmental side, which is academia and campuses, how is the situation there? Are there any programs that works on anti-Semitism? Any non-governmental programs that combat anti-Semitism in Poland?
There are foundations and associations, NGOs which are working on it. They try to estimate anti-Semitism. They try to create some manuals. They try to reach schools and universities sometimes with their tools and with their knowledge with some tutorials. But it's on a very small scale because they are, of course, they don't have money. It's always a financial problem for them to even survive. So, and on this, let's say, national level, or the governmental level, you have Chanukia. During Hanukkah they put Chanukia in the Polish parliament, and this is the way they manifest their sympathy, or I don't know, their anti-Semitism. And of course, I have nothing against Chanukia in Polish parliament, but it's definitely not enough to combat anti-Semitism.
Something that you would like to say as a recommendation, possibly for researchers who wants to work on Polish anti-Semitism?
I think it's worth to research Polish anti-Semitism in the comparative perspective with other countries in the region, but because I think you can find similar patterns, similar schemes of anti-Semitic mindsets and similar functions of anti-Semitism in the region, in Central and Eastern Europe, in post-communist countries. This is one thing. And another thing is that if you want to research, if you focus on researching anti-Semitism in Poland, it's one of the first things you need to research or read about is the current official politics towards Holocaust, the official commemorations, the official way of memorizing Holocaust, to understand how it is related to the way Poles perceive their own history.
Are you concerned there will be more rise of anti-Semitism within Poland than Eastern Europe?
Yes, absolutely. I think now this new wave of anti-Semitism, which is tremendous and absolutely horrifying after 7th October, this mechanism of blaming the victims, this new vocabulary of anti-Semitism brought with this whole set of anti-Zionist vocabulary, this is something which will grow here. And it is growing now, and it will be stronger. I'm sure about that. It will again overlap with already existing patterns of anti-Semitism, and I'm afraid we will witness a new anti-Semitic. New anti-Semitic waves.
Anna, thank you.
Thank you, Omar. Thank you for inviting me.
This was our 36 minutes on anti-Semitism.